Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Master Chess Web Show. And in today's show, we have another special guest, FIDE Master Tim Wall. So, hello, Tim, and welcome to our show. Let's see what can happen this time. I think Andrew's got a few questions he wants to ask you to help fill the viewers in on you know who you are and what you do and everything. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Nigel. Very kind of you. Of course, Tim is a very sharp and interesting player, and we've got a number of his games to demonstrate. He's also a Northumbrian maverick, so he might have some interesting views on various topics. And I'm going to start by simply asking him to tell us a bit about himself and how he got into chess.
Well, I was taught by my dad, basically. John Wall, who is in the other room right now. He's just a wonderful 89-year-old chess enthusiast and keen cyclist. Wow. Unfortunately, he was cycling the other day and had a little tumble. But you know, great guy. And he taught me when I was about 7, taught me how the pieces move, etc. And he was a keen player. He played Sir George Thomas in some Skittles games, as he calls them. Wow, I think he lost every single one. Yeah. But when Sir George died, he left my dad some money in his will. They were clearly good friends.
That's amazing.
So, you know, 500 quid, which is quite a lot of money back in 1972.
Wow.
So I learned from my dad, and I was rubbish, basically. I used to lose all my games at primary school, chess club. And when I was about 11, I was still losing to Scholar's Mate. And then something happened, which I can't quite fathom, because I sort of got good.
You learned to play the French.
And then I sort of progressed up the ranks and won the British under-16. So from someone who couldn't really stop Scholar's Mate at 11, that was quite some improvement.
Yeah, massive, isn't it? Wow.
It's quite interesting, actually. A lot of people think that the age rating graph is going to be smooth, you know, but the thing is, you never know what you're going to get, like at the, you know, in a couple of years' time or at the end of adolescence or whatever. You know, all of the you know, so-called predictions, you know, about so and so being a you know, the next Bobby Fischer or Magnus Carlsen or whatever, they all turn to dust. You know, you just never know. No matter how promising somebody is.
So your improvement, did it happen in the Northeast? Were you still up there at that point?
Right. So at the time we lived in Stockton-on-Tees near Middlesbrough, and I went to a club called Billingham, and then I went to another club at the same time called Middlesbrough, and that was where all the strong players really on Teesside were. There was a guy called David Wise, David Smith, Tommy Wise. Tom Wise used to play in the British back in the 50s. So it's basically where all the strong players were, about 5 or 6 players around, you know, now we'd say 200, 210, yeah? So that was quite a good kind of school. And then I had this fantastic rivalry with my clubmate, a guy called Maury Vincent. I think he later went to Australia to get away from me or something. And but our rivalry kind of helped us both, I think. You know, we kind of spurred each other on. We used to play training games around at each other's houses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What about the other Northeast players? I mean, there was Dave Mooney. He was
that's right. Yes.
And
yeah, he was a legend at the time. Yeah.
Charles' story came a bit later, and Daniel O'Malley even later still. You know, the upstart.
Mooney was really one of the country's strongest players. I'll never forgive him for beating me after I opened 1H4 against him. He gave me a good thrashing. The most mortal was very polite. I always get on with it really well, but he just plays a bit now, doesn't he, Dave Mooney?
Well, I was instrumental in getting him to start playing over the board again.
Okay.
So there was a tournament that I ran in Newcastle in 2018, the first reiteration of the Northumbria Masters. and I invited him to come along and watch because I'd heard that he was still playing online. And he came along and he saw Mark Hebden there, and they sort of, saw each other like long lost brothers sort of thing. And Hebden said, "Oh, you haven't changed a bit." And they hadn't seen each other for like 25 years, So that was nice. And he's a really good friend of mine these days. But of course, back in the day when we played, it was brutal. You had to really be on your guard playing against Dave Mooney.
Oh, yeah.
He was graded 235 for about 10 years, which is amazing because he never left the northeast of England. So he was, quite a good player. And
that's amazing.
David Walker is another player. Ken Neat, still knocking around.
Walker's still playing, isn't he? Quite a lot.
Yeah. So.
Well, anyway, you're also a very dangerous player, as we can see from some of your games. So why don't you take us through one of your games to kick off with against
I will just share the screen here.
the Bangladeshi Grandmaster Niaz Murshid.
Okay, I'm just going to open up. Let's see. My lead chess on my screen. Yep. Okay.
Go for it.
So this was in the Lloyds Bank Masters, I think in 1989, something like that. So it's a long time ago. And I have to say, I did have to look carefully through this game in the last 24 hours because I've forgotten most of my games prior to about 2000,
Yeah.
I certainly haven't played through them with a computer, That was just something that we didn't do.
We still don't do it on this show.
We're a computer-free zone.
Okay, so here's the game. Let's get into it, yeah? So he plays a sort of version of the modern. And this was interesting because it was the first Grandmaster that I'd actually beaten 1-1 over the board. So it was a kind of a big deal for me, which is why I suggested that you might want to look at it, yeah? And so he plays this Gurgenitzer. And I played this system with F3. Now this, it kind of transposes into something called the fantasy variation, which people may be aware of, against the Caro-Kann. Yeah, so we just go back just to show people how that might come about. Is that okay? Yeah?
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah, so after D5, F3, and I remember seeing a game by Andy Ledger, of all people, where he tried this, and I was quite taken by it. And it creates a different kind of position to what the Caro-Kann players are used to.
Because normally black takes on E4, doesn't it, and goes E5, is that right?
Yes, yeah, they could do that. That's
or
right.
E6.
Yeah, and then, so in the game I saw of Andy Ledger's, he was playing somebody at one of the trumps I organised, and after E6, he played Bishop E3, and this is an old Smyslov idea. Pawn takes, knight D2, kind of weird sort of gambit line. But White's playing for sort of control of the E5 square, going to pop a bishop on D3 and try and attack on the king side. And of course, Black has got an issue of how to develop the C8 bishop. So that seemed to sort of work quite well on that occasion. That impressed me, yeah. But I can't remember if that was before or after this game. I think it may have just been an accident that I played this system. Yeah. So after F3, Black could play G6, knight C3, bishop G7, bishop E3, and we have the same position transposed.
Murshid was a really original player, actually, if I remember correctly. It was he that it really gave the impetus to the Barry attack, in the early days.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, you guys probably know better than me whether it was that Hebden got the idea from Murshid or vice versa. I don't know.
I think it was that way around.
Yeah. There was Murshid
was playing the Barry in the Lloyds Bank Masters tournaments of the 70s or 80s. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He had a very similar player from India called Barua. Do you remember him?
Yes, Dibiendu Barua.
Yeah, very highly talented player, almost playing without theory. He's so talented he can just beat players
Yes.
by playing in a certain
That's right.
style.
Yeah.
But they were always vulnerable to a quick attack, if you see what I mean. So let's see what you can come up with here.
Yeah. So Queen B6. So I mean, you know, at the time, I think I was like 23 or something, not very highly rated player, maybe about 2,200 or something. And so, yeah, I mean, the guy he thinks he's going to play something and bamboozle me slightly, yeah? So he's going to take the pawn on B2, so I just basically let him have it. It's fine if he wants to take the B2 pawn.
Yeah,
Good luck.
You're supposed to. I think you're supposed to now take it straight away and give back the D5 pawn.
That's right.
So you do this and then give.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
and get developed.
Yeah, I subsequently had a game against Andrew Ledger from the white pieces where he did that, and I beat him. Yeah, that was the first Killingworth International. We used to have international tournaments in my local club. They were always kind of spit and sawdust affairs, you know, up in the northeast.
Like Charlie Story's Holy City event.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, I don't know what I wish. I was long gone from the northeast after that. By the time that Charlie was organising his.
Did you see his show?
Yes, I think I watched.
Yeah, he described a game taking place in two different venues in the same round. You know, that's a sort of chaotic tournament that it took place. Yeah.
I mean, because we were, as Charlie Story and I and some other players of around the same age, we were all great friends, and we were. I mean, I was a chess teacher, but basically we were all more or less unemployed. Yeah, hanging around in Newcastle in the early 90s. And on one occasion, I decided it would be a great idea to do a charity 24-hour chess marathon. Yeah. So we started off playing in our chess club, and then we went to my flat in Newcastle. We played all through the night. And then in the morning, this had all been set up. We went to BBC Newcastle and went on the radio with our 24-hour chess marathon. But that was, you know, kind of typical of the sort of slightly zany things that we did, you know. And Charlie had a flat in the centre of Newcastle at one point where chess players would just come and hang out for like days on end, you know. And there would be like a blitz tournament that would be, you'd go there in the morning, it would start, you go back there like later at the night, and it was still going on. And yeah, so it was kind of a hothouse chess atmosphere, but not very scientific. It was just more like some chess hustlers getting together, basically. Anyway, sorry, we're getting diverted from the game.
Well, you're playing like a bit of a hustler in this game after Queen D2, so do carry on.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, in the sort of introduction notes you sent me to the game, to our interview today, you said that I was sort of this attacking or risky player. And I do think that I did play like a hacker a lot when I was younger, for sure. Yeah.
Did this change? I think one of the interesting things about your life is you went to live in Russia. Right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Did this change when during your time in Russia? And what were you doing there exactly?
Well, not playing chess, bizarrely. Which you would think. I mean, I first of all went to Azerbaijan, which is now a very strong chess nation, of course, and then. But it was just emerging at that point. This was 1999.
Yeah.
And then I went to Russia. And the reason I went was because of someone who I was dating at the time, who some chess players may know, a chess journalist called Sarah Hurst.
Yeah.
And Sarah got a job out in Baku, Azerbaijan with BBC Monitoring, which is kind of legal form of spying. The American and the British governments pay these people at the BBC to monitor all the broadcasts of.
It's actually quite common that you get quite a few people who seem not to have a job, and they're actually monitoring the media in countries that they are stationed in.
Right, but it was all, as far as we could tell, it was above board,
basically.
And the short version is that both Sarah and I had been sacked, but from our chess editing jobs in England. Sarah had been sacked by the ECF. She was campaigning for a boycott of the Chess Olympiad.
It must have been a well-paid post. What a shame.
It was editor of Chess Moves, okay, which has been resuscitated. The name has been, but more seriously, she was working for a Russian language magazine in London, and because of the Russian financial crisis of 1998, all these companies went bust who were paying the adverts in the magazine, and so she was left without a salary for about 4 months. They just, they went bankrupt and owed her all this money. And then at the same time, I was sacked by Murray Chandler because of my association with Sarah Hurst.
Sorry, who were you working for then? BCM?
Yeah, I was working for British Chess Magazine. And, Murray, obviously, huge friend of the England team and players. And Sarah was quite aggressive in her boycott campaign, let's say, So she wrote letters to all the England team saying that they should boycott the Olympiad because someone connected with Curzan had allegedly killed an opposition journalist. And that was what was at the heart of the boycott. Yeah. And so Murray thought that I had sort of conflicts of interest because I was dating Sarah. And this was a contributing factor to why I was no longer the editor of British Chess Magazine. Anyway, I mean, if Murray is out there watching, I hope you're doing well. No hard feelings, led to a very interesting.
I think he's in his seaside mansion, actually.
Sorry?
He's in a seaside mansion.
Right.
In New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right. I think he got in a good stock of wine before they had this series of lockdowns there.
Right.
And but I saw from the picture he was short of a gardener, right? Because there was something overgrown, so he probably had a problem getting gardeners as well.
Well, it's obvious, Tim. There's a slot for you there. Do his garden.
Gardener. Murray, take me back, please. I'll do your garden.
So basically, we were both sort of at a loose end, and because Sarah, she'd been a journalist in Moscow and St. Petersburg in the early 1990s. This was a kind of natural fit for her of monitoring Russian language broadcasts, And I went out there, and then I started working on English language newspapers first of all in Baku, and then moved to Moscow. So that's how I ended up in Moscow, and then eventually became editor-in-chief of the Moscow News, which is one of the two main English language newspapers in Moscow. So that was the very, very short version of what I was doing in Russia.
Was this like to disseminate Moscow's version of events to English people?
Yeah.
They've probably got an opening at the moment,
So there was people may not be aware of all the intricacies of it, but at one point, Vladimir Putin had stepped down as president of Russia constitutionally. He hadn't yet fixed it so that he could be the president for life, sort of thing. Yeah. So he had his understudy, this sort of rather weak character called Dmitry Medvedev, stand in as president for him for 4 years. And as part of this, they wanted to present a more credible image to the West at that point.
Yeah.
This is 2008, 2012. And so I was hired, and they said, we want you to be editorially independent. It was owned by the state news agents here in Novosti. And I don't think they quite knew what they were letting themselves in for. basically.
So, I mean, you know, can we be sort of like relieved that you haven't been, you know, sort of, you know, fished out of some or just disappeared in Russia? You know.
Well, we tried all sorts of interesting experiments with this newspaper, including just telling the truth, of course. And this is a newspaper that was founded by a certain Joe Stalin in 1930.
Yeah.
And as part of the Tell the Truth About the History of the Newspaper project, which I started, we did point out that several of the editors had been executed on Stalin's orders.
Yeah. Isn't the word for truth pravda? Is that pravda?
Yeah, there's a nice Russian joke about the newspapers Pravda and Izvestia.
Yeah.
The Pravda means truth and Izvestia means events.
Right.
And the Russian joke goes, there's no Izvestia in Pravda and there's no Pravda in Izvestia. So in other words, there's no events in the truth newspaper and there's no truth in the events newspaper.
Yeah.
It's a Russian sense of humor thing.
Did you play any chess while you were in Russia?
I visited some chess events.
But did you
so
actually sit down and play? You know,
I visited there was a Armenia versus the rest of the world match.
Right.
At a big swanky hotel in Moscow, and Bronstein came along, and he remembered me from some tournaments in England. That was nice. And Spassky was there, and people like that. I played a tournament just before I left, and I got crushed by all these Russian and Indian juniors, and lost like 80 rating points.
Should we get on with the game? That's
yes. Why don't we stop?
We do these for an hour, by the way, so you're going to have to go pretty quick.
You have to get a bit of move on, yeah. So, well, that was the short version. So, Merched takes on e4, which is really not a great idea. You're just giving the center to white.
Yeah.
I mean, you could maybe without queen b6, you could take and go e5. That's a playable line, although white is also fine. And well, you know, this is just a nice position to play. So target f7, why not? Yeah. And then roundabout here, sort of Merched tries to get a bit creative. b6.
Usually a mistake, isn't it?
But I mean, it's not great. So you know, I just thought, well, okay, so I can keep that bishop. I played knight e2, bishop a6, bishop b3, and Black has a really big problem here on the f file. I think it's safe to say, yeah.
Yeah.
So he played knight f6. I castled, and here, basically, he decided that, yeah, it's all going a bit south for him here.
He's got a problem. If he castles, don't you go e5, knight d7, rook takes f7? Rook takes rook f1 or something.
That's right. So if he castles here, this was certainly my intention. Yeah, so you go e5, and I guess the knight maybe goes to g4. Yeah. And I one of the things I do remember is I was thinking of playing rook takes f7 and then rook to f1.
Yeah.
But now I look at it, the computer doesn't like that. The computer says just play bishop g5.
Oh, we've got an engine on. Let's get rid of that.
I just looked earlier. That's all. Sorry.
We don't usually have engines on the show.
Sorry. I'll wash my mouth out. So I was thinking of going rook takes f7, rook takes f7.
Don't want any Pravda here.
No. Right. But we have plenty of Izvestia.
Just
yeah, let's look at the Izvestia of the rest of the game.
So, you know, I mean, I think that would have been interesting. But he played bishop b7 instead.
Yeah.
And then e5.
This is just asking to get annihilated, isn't it?
I mean, this is, yeah. I mean, it's a nice occasion, but I don't think
you could have gone bishop h6 as well, couldn't you? Bishop h6.
I don't. Well,
instead.
Well, here I either take on f7,
Yeah.
or winning knight, or he plays knight d5, in which case he loses immediately to bishop takes d5 and knight b5. Boom.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So it's awful, basically.
What did he miss when? Do you think he was
Good
originally
point.
intending knight d5, and then realised to his horror that would
I don't know.
happen to him?
I think you got me, really. I think he just thought it was going to be an easy game.
Well, this is why I mentioned Barua earlier, because, you know, I think both of them had a kind of tremendous self-confidence in their own ability.
Right.
Which you know, enables him to go into this position and lacking a sense of danger. And once you go past a certain point as black in this position, well, I guess starting with the move bishop b7, you can't recover, can you?
No.
I would have thought it was starting with d takes e4. You know,
All the way back there. Wow, yeah.
Very, you know, you've got to get to get the pawn back in that position.
I mean, he just thinks he can defend any position because he's, you know, got a lot of talent, and it comes to this, and then he suddenly realizes he can't, you know, and
yeah. I mean, I can see that. I mean, what the solution he came up with was to give a piece away for 2 pawns. Yeah. So what's the material now? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. He's got 2 pawns for the piece. He might have thought this was somehow defendable.
not after that.
But in fact, you know, White still has a lot of pressure, and the pieces are very nice. There's no let-up of the initiative. That's the problem. Yeah. Knight g3.
Very nice.
And of course, this is, you know, my 23-year-old self. You know, just I don't know if you guys ever find this, but when you look back at games from when you're young, you think, well, how did I ever play like that? Because nowadays I would be scared to do that. You know, we didn't seem to have any fear.
Well, it's just ignorance, basically. We just didn't know all the bad things that could happen.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things. You feel that you know more now about chess, but somehow you know, people play it better when they're younger. It's a weird thing. Anyway, there you go. So just very simple. Knight f5 is coming.
Back. You speak for yourself. You know, I'm on the comeback trail. Anyway, let's do the rest.
My rating has gone up by nearly 100 points.
I hear the Knutsford quick player still taking entrance, Nigel.
The Knutsford quick play sounds good.
Knutsford,
Yeah.
that's Knutsford.
All at the service station.
Right. So so this is just
Oh my God.
this is just annihilation. Knight f5 check is coming, something like that. So he gets out the way.
That's a nice move as well.
Yeah, that's quite nice, isn't it? Yeah. And so, I mean, just look at the rest of his pieces are kind of spectators. I just have to prevent him getting the queen back somehow. Oh, and there we go. So yep. And that's just game over now. He played on till the bitter end.
He should have been born in the 19th century, if I remember our show with Steinitz.
Yeah.
But they never resigned.
And so
Steinitz was one of our best guests, actually.
He knew when to shut up.
Okay, let's finish with this game.
Yeah.
So he tried one last.
Oh God, look at that.
He tried the last little joke, you know, and then I just sort of ignored his queen, and he resigned.
Right. Okay.
So so that was that game.
Simon Williams.
Simon Williams. I chose this because Simon is obviously, like a lot of people.
Go back to the start.
No, I find him one of my favourite players, and
Is it because you think he's always going to give you a chance?
well, since we've played, since I restarted playing chess again around about 2016, I don't seem to be able to lay a glove on him, to be honest. He's a much stronger player now. But I look back through my games, and I actually had a plus record against him back in the day. And this is kind of the funniest game because I beat him with the grob.
Yeah.
And
I mean, do you think you're doing worse against him now because you've given the grob up?
no.
This is the ball, surely. This is the ball, not the grob, isn't it?
Well, what G5 against, there's a very strong case for saying that G5 is, as black, is strongest against 1c4.
Yeah.
because you can sort of play this, you can play it positionally. And white can't really get the same, if you play e4, g5, this is already very dodgy. Yeah.
But it's probably pretty good against 1h3 as well, g5, Some of us might prefer b6.
I mean, I sort of have a bit of a record of beating strong players with weird openings. So I beat a guy called James Howell, who you remember?
Yeah.
With 1A3 when we were juniors. And I beat Mikhail Shuba with 1H3.
He must have been over the moon about
that. Yeah. I guess it's a little bit of the Karpov-Miles phenomenon, isn't it? That it's a kind of a real slap in the face.
I remember playing Suba in the British Championship. I played the Old Indian, and we were friends, and in the middle of the game, he would play this opening. He said, you still play this shit. He said, in the middle of the game, went on to lose. I was quite pleased to win that game.
Yeah. It's a pity. He went over to the Canary. It was the Canary Islands.
Probably.
It was quite a character. He did very well into English chess.
And of course, he lived in the northeast, didn't he?
Yes, he lived in Sunderland. So why he would possibly have abandoned sunny Sunderland for the Canary Islands, I have no idea.
Well, strange decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always felt that his defection from Romania had more about him wanting to just leave his family and come and live in England, really. And then they followed him, unfortunately, to Sunderland. And so he left again.
Where are the family now? Did they follow him to the Canary Islands as well?
No idea. I've no idea. Maybe they're still in Sunderland. Yeah.
Well, that brings us back to the Borg.
Yeah.
Yes, the Borg. So basically, the answer is I gave up the Grob. Round about.
You took up the Borg.
Yeah. So this was kind of like a little last hurrah, like the bishop. It comes back. Yeah.
Is that h6 the normal move? Surely they go bishop g7 there, don't they?
This is the thing. The Basman now tends to sacrifice the g pawn all the time. Whereas when he was at his peak, he used to hang on to the pawn, which I think is better.
You think this is better for black than bishop?
Well, you see, also, I mean, you're not giving white a kind of easy way to deal with this pawn. So if white tries to deal with it by h4, then white is making it arguably a little bit more difficult for himself on the king side if he castles there.
Well, he does go h4 in a minute in the game, doesn't he? So we get this, and now h4 here.
I mean, I think against someone like Simon, I wasn't really aware of him in the 90s as a kind of like crazy player, if you like, who played like.
Well, I knew him since he was a kid, and he always used to play the French and the Dutch with black. A repertoire model on his dad's repertoire. His dad was a very strong player. Yeah, and he was a very correct player, I think.
Yes, that's right.
But he always had a liking for sharp play.
Right. So here, I mean, if you've got somebody who is a kind of swashbuckling player, then I guess an opening like the Grob is perhaps not such a bad choice, because they're not just going to sit there and play correct chess. They're going to try to refute it. And that can give you a chance, I suppose. Yeah. So here we've got the weakness of d4, compensates for, I'm sounding like Basman now, the weakness of d4. That's rubbish. d4 is fine. But so let's see. So we have c5 here. And this, this is a little bit like Charlie's.
The sniper stuff.
So-called sniper, which he invented the name, but perhaps very little else. Yeah. But I mean, this was known as an idea as part of the Grob from when Basman first did his audio chess cassettes. you know. So this was another part of my chess. I was going to say development, but what's the opposite of development? Regression. Yeah. When I was about 16, 17, I got into all of these audio chess cassettes, and it really ruined my chess for a long time.
I suppose we should point out for the readers that queen takes g4 is met by queen takes c3 check, winning the rook.
That's right. Yep. Okay. And that also conveniently defends the g7 square as well. So there's no getting in for the queen. So queen a5, knight e2. And I would say actually that this position is already fine for black. You can see similar ideas in the accelerated dragon.
Well, yes, it's got places where you can get pawn cover for the king. You know, the sort of e8 may be the best square for it, but I would have thought so. It looks okay for black now.
I mean, you know, the a chessable course coming on.
I mean, Larson used to play the accelerated dragon.
Imagine move trading this opening.
Yeah. All right. So, okay. So we've got this position. Should white play? I don't know. I suppose he could go c5, but he hasn't really got a lot of development yet. He hasn't got a natural home for the king unless he gets castle queenside. If c5, black can play b6.
Well, his bishop d4 looks quite sensible because at least it makes you loosen your pawns slightly. You know, he does sort of have a square or two now. But these your structure is very solid.
Yeah. Sorry, Nigel. So the pawns on e5 and d6 now actually guard the dark squares quite well.
Yeah.
Quite a harmonious position for black, isn't it?
Yeah, you put the bishop on e6, and this is like some form of Sicilian.
Yeah.
It's just weird that we've pushed the g pawn, I guess. So
stops white playing g4 in a big hurry.
So I mean, you know, the classicists would object, as they say, because how many queen moves have I played at this point? 1, 2, 3, 4. I've only got one other piece out. It's, you know, typical English chess, as the Russians would say. Yeah, very incorrect. So there's a nice square for the knight, c5. We'll put it there. Somehow this has turned out okay for black. Yeah. c5, interesting move. I think it's typical of Simon's active style that he would give up a pawn there. Yeah.
Can I just digress for a second?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I run quite a strong training group in a Guildford Chess Club on a Monday evening, and I showed them a game of Tony Miles last night, which started like this.
Yeah.
And they were completely unable to fathom, you know, what's happening in this game. And Miles slaughtered his opponent, Ergard, because, I mean, the guy's quite a good player, but he couldn't come to terms with this type of random position. I think it was after this game that Court called Miles's chess from another planet or something like that.
Yes.
Well, I mean, your reference to the English style of play at that time, if we just come back to your game, I mean, in essence, you were playing exactly like that. You're playing a kind of confusing, very weird and unorthodox style of play, and yet you've got a good position. And if we wondered how did he get that good position, it would be quite difficult to actually put it into words.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you see, what I mean, the other weird thing, of course, is that Simon is a very big fan of Basman's and was coached by him at some point as a junior. And I think I think there's a link, the creativity there, you know. But the interesting thing, to come back to your point, is that where Basman tricked people was they couldn't work out kind of when he was stopping being silly and starting to play sensible chess. You know, and once you got past the first few moves of Basman's games, a lot of his games are very actual classical positional play. And so I think that's the, you know, from a psychological point of view, that's the trick. You can try to convince your opponent that you're absolutely bonkers, and then you play sensible moves, you know.
We're trying to get Basman on the show, but he seems to have some problem downloading Zoom onto his computer. I'm not sure what it is, apart from, you know.
Yes, you may have to do a live thing.
I
with him.
hate of computers, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, okay. So I mean, I think also it's related to this the English weekend circuit. You know, if we could, you know, refer to the Grand Prix circuit of the 70s, 80s, etc. That those tournaments, you know, they weren't like Soviet tournaments where you play, you know, 9 rounds in 9 days, and you take your annual holiday and you go and play at some sanatorium on the Black Sea, and it's all like that. Yeah, correct chess. This is people playing weekend chess. And so they became, as you guys know, more better than me, yeah.
Sleeping on the
these
floor,
weekend warriors. It was all about scoring 6 out of 6, you know, 5 out of 5. Get your names on the Grand Prix leaderboard. Go for the £10,000. That was what it was all about. So you know, it kind of led to this maximalist school of chess, I think, and slightly, you know, taking chances, etc. So I don't think there's anything unusual about my play in that sense. I'm just kind of, you know.
We move on if you want to do the.
Please do. Yes. Okay. So, yep. So round about this point, so this is all kind of normal, and then kind of Simon goes a little bit berserk here.
Yeah, that looks wrong because he's opening the G file.
Exactly. Yes, and as all good Grob players know, that you don't do that. So you know.
Well, you might have been starting to get a little bit fed up with the way the game was going. You know, he decided to go into chaos mode at this point because you know, he's a pawn down already, and not with a very good position. You know, so maybe he just decided to roll the dice.
Yes, that's right. I mean, you know, rook takes f3 looks like a move, I suppose. But yeah, queen f2. And I guess it's based on the idea that if you go knight g4, queen takes, the queen can go to f6. But after this move, rook a g8, there is no, you know, there's no big threat because the black king can just go to f8 and we don't lose the
I guess we should point out the problem there, that if you after knight g4, queen takes f3, knight takes e3, queen f6 check, the king has to go to f8, lose the rook on h8. Whereas it also loses the knight because then you'll come back, won't you? Here, check. Here,
this little switch back,
and take the knight. Whereas after rook a g8, then the king can go to f8 without losing the rook.
So the rook's on g8 defending it. Yeah.
So now knight takes e3, I think, is probably a real issue.
That's right. Yeah, but his solution is possibly worse than the worse than what he's currently facing, because he drops the bishop back. Probably he has to do something with this bishop on b5 because it's loose. Maybe come back or something. But
doesn't look like a position where there's any salvation, actually.
And then this, and he's just completely lost now. So the threat of discovered checks, etc. This is well,
get a knight f5 check.
So I mean, f5 is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has just gone into like chaos mode, just throwing the kitchen sink at you. But you know, you may accidentally get in the way of it,
especially after his next move.
So this, I mean, I just play to win some material here. This is insane. Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel embarrassed about showing this game of Simon's because he's such a brilliant player, and this is not representative at all of his play.
But let's go through his death agonies.
Yeah. So let's sort of put him out of his agony then. Yeah. So I took here, everything's covered. Yeah.
Get a check in. Get a check in.
Yeah, but
you could have a check on it. Yeah, but instead he comes around here. Just keep taking the pieces. Keep taking the medicine.
Explore Sport Chess.
Yep. And then just let's have the queens off, please. Yep.
Yeah. And
then he resigned.
Understandably, he tendered his resignation at this point.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, what's the lesson of that game? Is that you can discombobulate. That's another word that Simon likes these days. You can unsettle your opponent by playing something weird, but maybe don't make a habit of it. Just use it for the odd, the odd surprise. I think is perhaps the best lesson from this kind of game.
I think it can be useful in this day and age because so many people are using engines to prepare themselves when they're trying to memorize moves. If you get a few games in the databases in with something very oddball, with luck, people will waste time preparing for it, and exhaust themselves prior to a game.
I'd never thought of that, Nigel.
Actually, going on to something else before we get into the final game, you are now very active in the organisation of tournaments. I mean, it's possibly a throwback to your early days when there were very few tournaments apart from the ones you organised yourself. So you're doing a great service for English and British chess. Can you tell us a bit more about why you're organising these tournaments and what they are? There's one coming up in Edinburgh, isn't that? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I think really I just enjoy it, You referred back to the early days, the 90s, and I organised the tournaments in my favourite pub in Newcastle, where we used to do a quiz, and there was a group of people there, Dave Ledger, Jonathan Nelson, people like that, and we all used to belong to the same chess team. And we just enjoyed chess as a social thing. So I thought, well, why not have a tournament in my local pub? And it kind of grew from there. And then, so when I came back to Newcastle, and still the same kind of feelings that I wanted to provide more opportunities for local players in the northeast of England, because I didn't feel that they were particularly well served by, tournaments always been in the southeast of England or, outside of their reach. So it just kind of grew from that, really. And then when you have a bit of success, you think, well, why not keep on going? So the Edinburgh tournament is because I saw the progress of this young lad from Edinburgh called Freddie Gordon. Yeah, he's 11 now. And I think he got a draw with Mickey Adams in the Online British. And seems to be, around about 2200 strength. So I thought, well, let's put that together with the idea that Edinburgh Chess Club has its 200th anniversary this year. And so far, nothing seems to have happened because Scottish chess is still coming out of its, COVID lockdown. Why not put on a tournament? So we're going to play at the Edinburgh Chess Club premises. And actually later today, we're going to do the pairings meeting on Zoom live from the Edinburgh Chess Club. So I'm going to go there, check out to see if the building is still in serviceable condition, because the last time I went there was 33 years ago. And it should be quite fun.
Yeah, but so that's not the only one you've organised. You've organised loads more tournaments in the,
Yes. So with the big one each year now is Northumbria Masters, which is going to be at a school in Newcastle where I teach. And that's 26th to the 30th of August, bank holiday weekend. Last year we had over 200 players. We're going to have the same again, hopefully, with some GM norm, IM norm tournaments. And I just get a kick out of it. I certainly don't earn very much money out of it, but I just like doing this. To me, it's like putting on a party for your friends, except the difference is it's just chess, Well,
you're certainly doing a great service for English chess by putting on these tournaments. Which brings us to our final game, and a game where you almost out-Hebdened Mark Hebden.
Yeah. Let's see. How do I get to I get back to, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I played, this is the Scottish Championship, the Open Championship, 2017. For some reason, I always do well in Scotland. I never do well in the British Championship, but I always do well in the Scottish Championship. I think it's memories of playing there in the 90s, where I also beat Hebden there, by the way, in the 90s. So, and I thought, well, you know, these days Hebden plays 1d4 exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, let's kind of drag. Sorry?
Apparently he started playing 1e4 as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, since he emerged from lockdown. During lockdown, he ordered some books on like the Bishop G5 Najdorf and stuff, and started delving into those. You know?
What?
So
really?
He's played. There should be some games of his online where he's playing 1e4 and playing like a beast.
Great. I'll look forward to seeing it. So 2017, he was playing d4. So I thought, let's drag him slightly back towards e4, e5 openings. It was perhaps a questionable decision because he had a very big score against the Philidor at the time of this game. He had about 80%. But since he had a good score with everything, why not?
Yeah.
Incidentally, can I ask you a question about this position? I had this position online recently.
Yeah.
Somebody played that. Do you know what to do about that?
Well, it's obviously a sort of there is a Shirov gambit 5g4.
Yeah.
There.
I think this is an attempt to,
which is quite reasonable gambit, and you could take the pawn, or you could.
I did take the pawn. I took the pawn and got a terrible position.
You could take on d4 now.
That's what I did. And
Oh, shouldn't you just play g6, which is a valid answer to 5g4, and you've got to play rook g1.
Yeah. I actually did this in the game.
No, but without ed, why'd you give up the centre?
Well, okay, fair enough.
It's told us when he was on our show, you shouldn't give up.
Yeah. Well, I guess he goes there.
Yeah, Bishop g7.
Yeah. And if g5, then I can go to
bunch of games come up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's no reason why rook g1 should not be a reasonable move, because it's a reasonable plan to castle queenside for white. And it's not exactly as though black is threatening anything.
No, it just struck me, it just struck me as an original idea, a good idea, an interesting idea.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody plays here, or tends to play for years and years and years, just bishop c4 and castle kingside. But it would be bizarre if that was the only way to play the position, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
anyway, this is what Hebden did.
Yeah. So and he had a good score with this line. A4, castles, c6. Incidentally, on this, where black plays h6 and g5, the so-called black lion, I don't really believe system.
You have to go back.
Well, I don't think any of us does. Actually, Tartakova was playing that way before it was a black lion, and he called the whole opening I think he called it the Proto-Indian.
Actually, it was
black lion. Actually,
it was George Marco who invented that system, I think.
Right. So Tartakova picked it up from Marco.
Yeah. H6 and G5.
Yeah, but Marco was a good player. Marco was a really good player, and that was probably one of the worst things he played.
I won quite a few games with this system as black, H6, G5, knight F8 to G6 and so on. But I got terribly smashed by Rumans at some point. He sacrificed a piece on E5 and played Bishop D4, and I got completely crushed. And since then, I had no faith in the system at all.
If you're going to play G5, it's better on move 1, isn't it?
No.
Get it out of the way early.
Yeah.
Well, Tim's playing the normal Philidor here.
Yeah. I mean, the other point is that there's absolutely very little crucially wrong with this system. I mean, the theory books now, I think, find a way to give white nice slight advantage, but it's nothing terrible. And I quite often recommend this to students if they're looking for a solid.
A6 and B6 and then B5, rook B8 and B5. Is that right?
Yeah, and you've got different plans in this position as well.
Queen
So you can play, as you say. So you could play B6 and A6. You could do it that way. But if you
Len Pickett, if anybody remembers him,
it might be a bit early for that because of B3.
yeah,
yeah, the idea of Queen E8, just in case anyone was wondering what this is all about, is to slowly transfer the bishop to D8 and then C7, or sometimes B6, or even A5. Just, yeah, and it does seem weird that you could spend all that time doing that.
Yeah, and probably you can't in this position because of B3.
I mean, White has played good moves so far. I would say probably the optimum moves in this system. So if B6, then White could play D5 and sort of transform it into some kind of.
I don't like this because
you
probably got to go Bishop B7, but I wanted to play C5 after D5, but then there's probably A5, isn't there?
This is like a Sicilian Bishop
this
B5.
is sort of, it's like playing a, whatever you call it, a
Check Benoni.
old Indian check Benoni sort of thing. And it's not wonderful. White has access to the C4 square later for a knight.
Well,
so this is perhaps an acquired taste to go B6. Yeah. So I quite like the idea of A5. We get some space on the queen side, and we can take on D4 at some point and play the knight into C5.
Which you did.
Yeah. So Bishop A2, and I took. Yeah. I mean, the slight problem for Black here is if you don't take, what exactly are you going to do? Yeah, because White has some sort of ideal moves to play here, like H3, Bishop E3. If you ever play H6, you have to slightly watch out for Queen D2.
I had a game against Djurhus, the Norwegian IM, where he played this I think, and then played knight H7 to G5.
Okay, yeah.
And that was a way of playing the position.
Yeah.
Okay, and I couldn't get very much against that.
Yeah. There was a guy at Southport Chess Club when I was young, Leo Leroy, and he always played H6 and knight H7 to G5, and H3 and knight H2 to G4 with White. He's very partial to this idea.
Yeah. But I think the point for for chess players thinking about the Philidor is it's quite an understandable system, and because I think that one of the things that happened in this game between me and Hebden is that both of us slightly forgot what the theory was supposed to be. Yeah, but you can just play the position. I think a lot of the time, I don't think you have to necessarily be so obsessed with what is the recommended book move. Maybe that's heresy. I don't know. Okay, so he took with the queen, and then I sort of hit upon the idea of putting a bishop on E6.
It's good to exchange that bishop on A2, I think.
A2, that's right. Yeah, I mean, yes, there is the possibility, but maybe White should have taken with the knight on D4 to look towards the F5 square with that knight. So, it seemed to me as quite often, I think that one of Mark Hebden's great practical strengths is that he plays quickly and he plays good, sound moves. Yeah, but sometimes, this would be my tip for playing against him, is that sometimes he's a little bit on like cruise control, so he's just playing standard moves. He thinks in between 1994 when I beat him and 2017, of course, there were lots of results. Hebden 1-0 Wall. Yeah, so he probably thinks, I'll just do something sensible against this guy and he'll he'll crumble at some point, like he usually does. Yeah. So at this point, he just seems to be playing sensible moves and hoping that he's going to have some pressure against d6. But it's quite nice to exchange that bishop off. And the pawn on d6 is not so bad.
I quite like Black's position now. I think that after exchanging his dark square bishop, it's become quite reasonable.
Yes.
Black.
Well, it's equal, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would have thought so. But
Maybe after Queen b6, what Black's a tad better.
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Queen e3, and well, of course, I realised that taking on b2 is certainly very risky and probably a disaster. So if you take on b2, then rook a b1.
Well, he just takes on b7 if nothing else. And
Takes
then
on
worse.
b7. I can't take on c2 because of rook e to c1 traps the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, I was actually thinking, okay, well, let's just go into the endgame. I mean, I could play queen b4 or something, but to be honest, in this game, I think there were a number of points where I could have played a little bit more riskily, but I was focused on, stopping Hebden, really. I was, obviously I have a lot of respect for him as a player, and I was just being very cautious, but for some reason in this game, it seemed to work out. So rook a d1, and sort the queens off, rook e8. So the knight on d7 could emerge to c5 probably, or b6, but for now it's okay where it is. So a little trick emerges. If rook takes d6, then I can take the knight on c3 and then fork the two rooks with knight takes e4. So that doesn't really work for him. Just defend the pawn. h4. So a bit of the context of this was that it was in the penultimate round of this Scottish Open, and I don't think that Mark was satisfied with the draw here, and I think that what happened was he sort of overpressed. Yeah. So I mean, when you're playing a stronger player, is it is it a good idea to play like this as I'm playing? I'm not sure. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what you guys feel.
Well, the difference is he's got to win the game, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. So if you realise that, then if you're sort of reasonably confident in your ability to defend the position, then it can be a strategy. I mean, I wouldn't be. I don't think I'd be happy if I was just defending here, but I feel that my nice bishop, my nice knight on c5, I feel if anyone's got a little something, maybe it's Black.
Your pressure is stopping him from doing anything at all, isn't it, really? I mean, he can maintain his position, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of, the next few moves, he just kind of goes a little bit over the top.
Yeah, this move,
F4.
Yeah.
And now that sort of almost creates a sort of hanging pawn situation with the pawn on a4. Yeah, it's a little bit like the, maybe not quite, in the Fort Knox French, where you have the white pawn on d4 and the white pawn on c4, say a black pawn on e6. Yeah, maybe it's difficult to describe in this position, but when you have a pawn on the half-open file, you probably shouldn't move this guy forward, the f pawn.
Mm.
Yeah, because that's really
target.
Yes. Then it becomes possible for the rooks to double up on that pawn, and you can't support it with f3 easily. You might get pinned on the e file with the rooks. Yeah. So f4. I'm just trying to play sensible moves. Rook d7, knight e2, rook e6. So yeah, I'm still not trying to force anything, and he kind of lunges and goes for it, which I was. When you see him play this, you first of all, you're a little bit scared. You think, oh, he must have seen something, and then you realize, actually, no, there's nothing to worry about. So maybe I could take here, exchange on e3 and play d5, but I just played back. He exchanged, and this is kind of making things worse now, almost, yeah?
Yeah.
Because his king, not so comfortable there.
Yeah, e4 is really weak now.
Yeah, and I haven't done anything really here. I haven't, I can't really claim to have done anything wonderful in this game.
It's a bit of a, it's one of Andrew's favourite strategies is the rope-a-dope.
Yes.
Well, not exactly.
That's an interesting point. You mentioned rope-a-dope, the Muhammad Ali strategy against George Foreman, because I've actually used that just like last week as a demonstration to my kids at the school where Northumbria Masters will be, St Mary's. And I talked about the chess strategy mirroring sports strategies like that. It's quite interesting.
I've had a succession of George Foreman grills, by the way, just to change the subject slightly.
Made you the man you are today, Nigel.
And the rope-a-dope chicken fillets, they just can't escape from this grill. He's got them trapped in there. I just wonder if this grill was like an extension of the match with Muhammad Ali. And he thought, well, these chicken fillets aren't going to escape.
Let's carry on.
Yes, let's.
It's a brief digression.
Yeah, so knight d4, and now basically he just loses a pawn. Yeah.
So knight d4 is a mistake, isn't it?
Yeah, and so here, and then d5. It's
very good.
Pretty obvious stuff. He's just created a pin on with an isolated pawn, and it's very difficult to defend now.
Yeah.
I remember him looking not very pleased around this point. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So I took. Now I could take with a rook, but then I sort of saw the idea of pinning the knight on the d file, which appealed to me. Yeah. And here not pinning, but forcing the exchange.
Yeah.
Bishop e5 would be another move, but so here, and so this is forcing. So we move 33 now. As I remember, it was a 40-move time control. So possibly, I imagine that he would not have been short of time. I think I must have been short of time at this point. So I was just trying to be slightly cautious and go for a line that I could calculate enough that it looked favorable for me. But I remember after the game, Hebden said, "Oh, you played that well." And I was thinking during the game that I hadn't worked out everything at all. So anyway, I'm a pawn up. And I remember thinking, well, I've got a bishop and there's play on both sides of the board. So that should be good. Yeah. Knight c5 looks like the best move now. But he played knight d8. And I seem to remember that he was kind of bashing out these moves as well.
Well, he was probably disappointed, to find himself a pawn down, and thought, oh,
yes,
I think that can have an effect on people long after the actual, moment where they made a mistake came. They can then follow up with some dodgy moves as well.
You've still got to get your king in the game, though, haven't you?
Yeah. So, okay, so we just, it's better not to lose the middle pawn. So we played b6, I took on g3. And so now his king's going to come up to the center, and I'm going to take the H pawn. That's sort of what happened. Bishop sort of dominating the knight, yeah?
Yeah.
And here it looks just pretty good because I've got these two pass pawns. I just have to be a little bit careful, really. Yeah, he can't really prepare. He can't play c3, so he can't really do much with his 3-2 pawn majority on the queen side. So I took, and then we sort of had this kind of little dance around with my king as I was trying to work out how to get the right position with the right person to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting Zugzwang coming up here, actually.
Yeah. So basically, I would like it to be white to move with my king on e6. Because then either his knight has to move back from this good holding position on d3, or he's going to have to give away with his king. And I remember thinking during the game, I can't quite work out how to do it, but then somehow it just happened. Yeah.
Well, you played this excellent move, King d7.
Yes, that's right. And it's this idea of corresponding squares. So when the king goes to g4, you want to play the king to e6.
Yeah.
So it's sort of form of triangulation or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And then I
think it's corresponding squares more than triangulation, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So he, at this point, just, well, there's nothing really to do.
Yeah.
If king e4, king e6. So he plays a couple of moves. And of course, he can't take. My king can deal with the queenside pawns, and his king is took over on the king side. And then he resigned.
Nice. Just going back to this position then, king d7.
Yeah.
There's nothing he can do here, is there? If he moves his king to g4, you go here, and now that's Zugzwang, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's not getting anywhere with like sacrificing a pawn on the queen side.
Yeah, because the king can reach the a pawn always.
Yeah. And if the knight b2, again, that's Zugzwang, isn't it? Again. So if knight d3, king f5, really, it's actually quite nice. In a way, paradoxical. Your bishop on the same color squares as your pawns, and yet you can zug him.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very, very nice, that.
But you know, I was kind of flattered because it's about.
I mean, one question here: what happens after that?
Okay, good question.
Take with the pawn.
Then a5.
G4 check.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get another check in on d6, aren't you?
Well, I have to kind of.
H3 check.
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Right, and
Is this forced? I don't know.
bishop d8.
D8, yes.
So presumably he has to take the pawn.
I guess that is the right idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this going back, c5.
But maybe king f5 isn't the right.
Well, this is okay, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah.
Check. I mean, obviously, if king h2, bishop d6 is the end. Looks rather nice, that.
Yeah.
And then that.
That should do the business, yeah.
And if this, you just take that.
Take.
And this is
The bishop will.
the wrong colour rook's pawn. This is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, G3 now. I mean, you could play knight f2, but then
Yes, that's the idea.
king G1, bishop b6.
But we just play g2 check.
Yeah, G2 check.
Bishop b6.
Ah.
Yep.
How absolutely annoying.
Yeah. But I one of the things I do remember is that that's one of the, Mark is, someone who, he's never really said a lot to me at chess tournaments, but that was one time that he actually said something nice after the game. So.
Well, that was a nice game.
Yeah.
So,
So what are your plans for the future, Tim?
Well, we've got a big initiative going. It's myself and Rob Wilmot, and Andy Martin's also involved with the English Junior Coaches and Organisers Association. We're planning a big national final of National Youth Championships in Nottingham on the 8th to the 10th of July. And the idea of this event is to try to, it's inspired by the events of, there used to be the Young Masters tournaments in the 80s and 90s. And so what we want is to provide a kind of an opportunity for the young players to play FIDE-rated classical games over a weekend with coaches on hand to look over their games afterwards. Because we feel that there are lots of rapid play tournaments for kids, but to try to create this conveyor belt to produce more title players, England's young players. That's the plan, and that also fits in with the all tournaments that I've been running as well. So in the second half of last year, at tournaments that I organised, there were 9 norms scored. I think it was 2 GM norms and 7 IM norms. And so this is part of the plan, really, particularly with Rob Wilmot and I. Rob is kind of the genius behind this plan of creating this Junior Coaches Association. We're going to apply to become a FIDE Academy, and then we should be able to nominate wildcards to go to European and World Junior events.
It should be noted that we applied before, but were turned down by the ECF. Is that not correct?
Well, we're hoping that basically as we prove that we can put on good quality events, good quality training events and tournaments, that the strength of our case will be just very clear to everyone. So, but we feel that, it'd be nice if the ECF gave us a lot more official support, but at the same time, we can just go ahead anyway, because we know that there is a demand for these kind of tournaments. We know that juniors and parents like it, and so therefore there's no reason not to just go ahead, And I'm sure that as time goes on, the powers that be will come around to the idea. So,
or possibly not. Anyway, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show, Tim. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks,
and well, good luck with your ventures and everything.
Yes. Oh, I forgot the other thing as well, which is that I'm hoping to get to 2,400 by the end of the year.
Wow.
The player. I'm on 2315 now. And when I get that magic total, all my old historic norms will hopefully be reactivated. So I have 4 IM norms from the 1990s.
Okay. Well, good luck with that.
So I'm aiming to be one of England's oldest qualifying international masters. That's the other plan.
How old was it Fuster who got the IM title very, very late? He was a Hungarian immigrant.
Right.
Got it when he was 60 or something. I'm not sure about that, but was it that he became British champion when he was 60?
Oh.
It caused absolute outrage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some Hungarian guy. Not sure Fuster was the right name, but he would be a good guy to do a show on.
Would it be Fazekas?
Fazekas, that's right, Fazekas.
Yeah. Well, John Pigott was 59 when he got his IM title a few years ago.
Okay.
So
Really? Was he as old as that?
Yes.
I mean, he always was a very strong player in his youth, you know, clearly destined for
Maybe
IM or GM, but then he just gave up. He went to Cambridge and got some
career and
better paying job.
Yeah.
comes along. Yeah.
Amazing how many people made that mistake.
Schoolboy error.
That's a good quote to end this show, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, and good. All the best.
Good luck in Edinburgh.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.